When my brother Marcus stood in our family attorney's office with that smirk on his face, watching me cry as the will was read, he had no idea that I'd been expecting this moment for 3 months. He didn't know that Mom and I had planned everything. And he certainly didn't know that in exactly 14 days, that smirk would be permanently wiped off his face. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up. My name is Rachel Morrison, and for 38 years, I believed in family above everything else. I was the older sibling, the responsible one, the daughter who called every Sunday and visited twice a month. My brother Marcus was 3 years younger, charming in that effortless way that made people overlook his flaws. Mom used to joke that I got all the responsibility genes and Marcus got all the personality genes. I never minded. Not really. I had a good life. I worked as a senior project manager at a medical technology firm in Portland, making about $92,000 a year. My husband Tom and I had been married for 12 years, and we had 2 kids, Sophie, who was 10, and Jake, who was 7. We lived in a modest 3-bedroom house in the suburbs. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. Well, mostly the bank's, but we were making it work. Marcus, on the other hand, had bounced between jobs his entire adult life. He'd been a bartender, a real estate agent, that lasted 6 months, a business consultant, which seemed to mean unemployed, and most recently, he was working at a car dealership in sales. He was 35, twice divorced, and still living in the same apartment he'd rented when he was 23. Mom lived in Sacramento, about an hour and a half from me and 3 hours from Marcus, who'd moved to Seattle after his second divorce. The house was the one Dad had bought in 1987, before I was born. It was a beautiful craftsman-style home in a neighborhood that had gentrified over the years. The property was now worth about $580,000. Dad had passed away 6 years ago from a sudden heart attack. He was only 62. Mom had been devastated, but she'd managed. She'd retired from her job as an elementary school teacher and lived on Dad's life insurance policy and her pension. It wasn't extravagant, but she was comfortable. I visited Mom every other weekend. Sometimes Tom would come with the kids. Sometimes it was just me. We'd have coffee on the back porch, work in her garden, and talk about everything and nothing. She'd tell me stories about her students, ask about my projects at work, beam with pride when I talked about Sophie's piano recitals and Jake's soccer games. Marcus visited maybe 3 times a year. Christmas, Mom's birthday in June, and one random weekend when he felt guilty enough. But he called her every week, and during those calls, he was all charm. He'd tell her about his latest business idea, make her laugh with stories from the dealership, promise to visit soon. "Your brother has such a good heart," Mom would say to me. "He's just still finding his way." I'd nod and smile, even though I'd been finding my way since I was 22 and had somehow managed to build a stable life without leaving a trail of broken relationships and abandoned careers behind me. But I didn't resent Marcus. Honestly, I didn't. We had different paths, different personalities. I was proud of what I'd built, and I didn't need validation from comparing myself to my brother. That all changed last April. It was a Thursday morning, April 18th, when I got the call that shattered my comfortable view of my family. I was in a meeting, reviewing project timelines with my team, when my phone buzzed. Mom's photo flashed on the screen. I excused myself and stepped into the hallway. Mom never called during work hours unless it was important. "Hi, Mom. Everything okay?" There was a pause, and then I heard something I'd never heard before in my mother's voice, fear. "Rachel, honey, I need you to come to Sacramento this weekend. There's something I need to talk to you about in person." My stomach dropped. "Are you sick?" "What's wrong?" "I'm not sick." "Well, not exactly. I need to see you. Can you come alone?" "Mom, you're scaring me." "Saturday morning. Please, Rachel. Just you." She hung up before I could ask anything else. I barely slept that night or the next. Tom kept asking what was wrong, and I couldn't explain it because I didn't know. All I knew was that my mother, who was usually cheerful and straightforward, had sounded afraid. Saturday morning, I left at 6 a.m. The drive felt like it took forever. I played out a dozen scenarios in my head. Cancer. Financial problems. She was moving. She'd met someone. None of it felt right. I pulled into her driveway at 7:30. She was waiting on the porch with 2 cups of coffee, and when I saw her face, I knew something was very, very wrong. She looked older. Not sick, exactly, but tired in a way I'd never seen before. Like she'd been carrying something heavy and was finally ready to set it down. "Hi, honey," she said, handing me the coffee. "Let's walk in the garden." We walked in silence for a few minutes. She kept starting to speak and then stopping. Finally, she sat down on the bench near Dad's old rose bushes and patted the spot next to her. "I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to not interrupt until I'm finished." "Can you do that?" I nodded, my heart pounding. I was diagnosed with stage 3 ovarian cancer 6 weeks ago. The world tilted. I started to speak, but she held up her hand. "Let me finish. The prognosis isn't good. With treatment, they're saying maybe 18 months. Without treatment, maybe 6 to 8 months. I've decided not to do treatment." "Mom!" "Rachel, please. This is hard enough." Her voice cracked. "I've had a good life. I'm 71 years old. Your father is gone. I don't want to spend whatever time I have left sick from chemotherapy, losing my hair, throwing up, being weak. I want to spend it with my family, in my garden, feeling like myself." Tears were streaming down my face. "We should get a second opinion. There are new treatments." "I've gotten 3 opinions, honey. I've done the research. I've made my choice." She took my hand. "But that's not what I needed to talk to you about." "Well, it is, but there's more." She pulled out her phone and opened her photos. 2 months ago, before I knew I was sick, Marcus called me. He said he'd started his own business and needed capital. He asked me to take out a reverse mortgage on the house to give him $150,000. I stared at her. "Please tell me you didn't." "I didn't. I told him I needed to think about it. But Rachel, he called me 12 times over the next week. He sent me links to articles about reverse mortgages. He showed up here unannounced and spent 3 hours trying to convince me. He even had papers drawn up." She swiped to a photo of a document. I leaned in and read. It was a reverse mortgage application for $150,000, with Marcus listed as the financial advisor. He told me it was smart financial planning, that I could live off the monthly payments and still leave the house to both of you when I died. But when I had my attorney look at it, do you know what he found? I shook my head. The way Marcus had structured it, with him listed as my advisor and himself as a co-beneficiary, he would have gotten control of the house when I died. You would have gotten nothing. The house that your father worked 30 years to pay off would have gone entirely to Marcus, minus the debt from the reverse mortgage. I felt sick. That can't be legal. It's not. Not exactly. But if I'd signed it without having someone look at it carefully, it would have been very difficult to undo. Marcus knows I trust him. He was counting on it. Did you confront him? Mom's expression hardened in a way I'd never seen before. I did. I called him and told him I'd had my attorney review the papers. Do you know what he said? I waited. He laughed. He said, "Come on, Mom. You know I'd take care of Rachel. Don't you trust me?" When I pushed him, he got angry. He said I'd always loved you more, that you were the golden child, and that for once in his life, he deserved something. Then he said, her voice broke, he said that if I didn't help him, he wasn't sure he could make time to visit anymore. I wanted to throw up. Mom! There's more. She swiped to another photo. It was a screenshot of a text conversation. I didn't tell you, but 3 years ago, I loaned Marcus $35,000 to help with his second divorce. He promised to pay me back. I never told you because I didn't want you to think less of him. These are the texts from 2 months ago when I asked him about repayment. I read the messages. They started civil enough, Mom gently mentioning the loan, Marcus saying he'd get to it soon. But then they escalated. By the end, Marcus was calling her greedy and saying she was holding money over his head. The final message made my blood run cold. You're sitting on a $600,000 house while I'm struggling. Some mother you are. Rachel, I need to tell you something else, and this is the hardest part. Mom took a deep breath. After this happened, I changed my will. I met with my attorney, Richard Chun. You remember him from your dad's funeral. I nodded. I changed everything. The house, my savings, the life insurance policy Dad left, everything. I've left it all to you. Marcus gets nothing. I started to protest, but she squeezed my hand. But here's what I need you to understand. I'm not telling Marcus. I'm not changing anything in how I act toward him. As far as he knows, everything will be split 50-50, just like the old will stated. Richard has the new will locked away. When I die, Richard will read the old will first, in front of both of you. I don't understand. Mom's eyes were fierce. I want to see your brother's face when he thinks he's won. I want him to have that moment of smug satisfaction, thinking he's getting half of everything despite how he's treated me. And then, she smiled, and it wasn't a kind smile. Then Richard will produce the real will, and Marcus will understand exactly what his greed has cost him. Mom, that seems petty, cruel. She laughed bitterly. Maybe it is. But Rachel, I need you to understand something. Finding out I'm dying has clarified a lot of things for me. Your brother is a 35-year-old man who tried to trick his elderly mother into signing over her house. A house his father worked himself to exhaustion to pay for. A house that holds every memory of our family. He didn't ask for help. He didn't propose a legitimate business loan. He tried to steal from me. She stood up and started pacing. You know what keeps me up at night? It's not the cancer. It's thinking about what would have happened if I'd signed those papers without having Richard look at them. I would have died thinking I was leaving both my children something from their father and me. And you would have gotten nothing. And Marcus would have sold this house before my funeral was over. I couldn't argue with that. I knew she was right. There's more to the plan, Mom continued. I need you to trust me on this, and I need you to play along. For the next few months, however long I have, I'm going to be extra nice to Marcus. I'm going to call him more. I'm going to tell him how much I love him, how proud I am of him. I want him to feel secure. I want him to think that despite our argument, I've forgiven him. Why? Because I want his surprise to be absolute. I want there to be no doubt in his mind that he's getting half of everything. And when the real will is revealed, I want him to know that he lost it all because of his own greed. We talked for 3 more hours that day. Mom showed me all the documents, the new will, her medical records, the texts from Marcus, even some emails where he'd continued to pressure her about investment opportunities after the reverse mortgage fell through. Every piece of evidence painted the picture of a man who saw his mother as a bank account rather than a parent. Mom died on August 19th, 4 months after that conversation. She'd been right about her timeline. She'd had about 6 good months left. She spent them exactly as she wanted, working in her garden, having weekly dinners with me and my family, and yes, talking to Marcus on the phone every week with warmth and love in her voice. It killed me to watch. Every time she told him she loved him, every time she laughed at his jokes, I wanted to scream the truth at him. But I'd promised her I'd play along, and I kept that promise. Marcus visited twice during those 4 months. Once in June for Mom's 71st birthday, and once in mid-August when Mom told both of us she was sick. She waited until then, telling us she'd just been diagnosed and the doctors had given her maybe 6 months. I had to pretend to be shocked and devastated. Marcus had hugged her, tears in his eyes, and promised to visit more. Then he pulled me aside in the kitchen. Listen, Rachel, I know this is hard, but we should probably talk about logistics. You know, for when the time comes. Logistics. The house. Mom's finances. We should make sure everything is organized so it's not stressful when you know. I'd stared at him, this man I'd grown up with, who I'd defended to friends who said he was irresponsible, who I'd made excuses for at family gatherings. This man who was already calculating the value of our dying mother's estate. I think we should focus on Mom right now, I'd said carefully. He'd shrugged. Of course. I'm just saying. We're both adults. We should be prepared. Mom had declined faster than anyone expected. By late July, she needed help with basic tasks. I'd taken family leave from work and essentially moved into her house. Tom would bring the kids on weekends, but during the week, it was just me and Mom. We had good moments. We looked through old photo albums. She told me stories about my childhood I'd never heard. She made me promise to keep her garden alive and to tell Sophie and Jake about her often. We cried together, laughed together, and said all the things we needed to say. Marcus called every few days, but only visited one more time, the weekend before she died. He'd stayed for 4 hours, told her he loved her, and then driven back to Seattle because he had an important client meeting on Monday. When Mom died, she was holding my hand. Her last words were, "Don't let him see you cry at the reading." I want you strong when he realizes what he's lost. I'd kissed her forehead and promised. The funeral was on August 23rd. It was a beautiful service. Mom's friends from her teaching days came, neighbors she'd known for decades, former students who were now adults with their own children. The church was packed. Marcus gave a eulogy that made people cry. He talked about what a wonderful mother she'd been, how she'd always believed in him, how much he'd miss her. He even choked up at one point. I watched from the front pew and felt nothing but cold fury. After the service, people kept telling me how lucky I was to have such a caring brother, how they could see that we'd support each other through this difficult time. I smiled and thanked them. The reading of the will was scheduled for August 30th, exactly 1 week after the funeral. Richard Chen's office was downtown Sacramento, in one of those old brick buildings with high ceilings and dark wood everywhere. The kind of place that smelled like leather and old books. Marcus showed up 15 minutes early, wearing a suit that looked like he bought it specifically for the occasion. He was chatty, making small talk with Richard's secretary, commenting on the weather, asking about traffic. He was practically vibrating with energy. I arrived right on time, wearing simple black slacks and a gray blouse. I'd barely slept the night before, going over Mom's instructions in my head. "Rachel!" Marcus came over and hugged me. "How are you holding up?" "Managing," I said quietly. "This is just a formality," he said as we sat down in Richard's office. "Mom always said everything would be split equally. We'll figure out the details, probably sell the house and split the proceeds. Unless you want to buy me out, I'm flexible." I just nodded. Richard came in and closed the door. He was in his late 60s, a methodical man who'd been my parents' attorney for 30 years. He looked at me, and I saw the slightest hint of knowing in his eyes. "Thank you both for coming," Richard began. "I'll keep this as straightforward as possible. Your mother left very clear instructions about how her estate should be handled." He opened a folder and pulled out a document. I recognized it, the old will, the one that split everything 50-50. "This is your mother's last will and testament, updated in 2021, Richard said. He began reading the formal language, and I watched Marcus's face. He was trying to look solemn, but I could see the satisfaction underneath. His leg was bouncing slightly, the tell he'd had since childhood when he was excited. Richard went through the details. The house, currently valued at $580,000. Mom's savings account with about $47,000. A life insurance policy worth $100,000 that Dad had left. Some bonds worth around $30,000. All in all, the estate was worth about $757,000. "The estate is to be divided equally between Rachel Morrison and Marcus Morrison," Richard read. Marcus let out a breath. I noticed he didn't look at me. He was staring at the papers, probably already calculating his share. $378,500. That's what he thought he was getting. "However," Richard continued, and I felt my heart start to pound. "This was it. I need to inform you both that there is a second document." Marcus looked up. "What do you mean, a second document?" Richard pulled out another folder, this one sealed with a red wax seal. "Your mother updated her will again in April of this year. She left specific instructions that I was to read the 2021 will first, in your presence, before revealing the existence of the updated version." I watched the color drain from Marcus's face. "What are you talking about? Mom never said anything about changing her will." "She was very clear about her wishes," Richard said calmly. He broke the seal and opened the new will. "This document was created on April 21st, 2024, witnessed by myself and 2 colleagues at my firm, and is legally binding. Your mother was of sound mind at the time of its creation." "Read it," I said quietly. It was the first thing I'd said since sitting down. Richard began reading. The language was formal, but the meaning was clear. "The house, to Rachel Morrison. The savings account, to Rachel Morrison. The life insurance, to Rachel Morrison. The bonds, to Rachel Morrison. Every single asset, every dollar, every piece of property, all of it went to me." Marcus's face went from white to red. "That's not possible." "She wouldn't. There has to be a mistake." "There's no mistake," Richard said. "However, your mother did leave you something." He pulled out a sealed envelope with Marcus's name on it in Mom's handwriting. He slid it across the table. Marcus grabbed it and tore it open. I'd read the letter before, Mom had shown me. I knew what it said, but I needed to see his face as he read it. His hands were shaking as he unfolded the single page. I watched his eyes move across the lines, and I saw the exact moment he realized what had happened. The letter was short. Mom had written, "Marcus, I'm sure you're shocked to discover that you've been left nothing from my estate. I want you to understand exactly why I made this decision. In February of this year, you attempted to convince me to sign papers that would have given you control of this house, your father's house, and left your sister with nothing. When I discovered what you were trying to do, you didn't apologize. You became angry with me. You said I'd always loved Rachel more, and you demanded that for once you deserve something. So I'm giving you what you deserve. Nothing. You tried to steal from me. You tried to manipulate me. You saw me not as your mother but as a source of money. You tried to take your father's legacy, the house he worked 30 years to buy and maintain, and you would have sold it without a second thought. Rachel has visited me consistently for years. She calls. She cares. She treats me like a mother instead of a bank account. She has built a stable life through hard work and dedication. She deserves everything I'm leaving her. You, Marcus, deserve to understand what your greed has cost you. Every time you tried to pressure me about money, every time you called only when you needed something, every time you promised to visit and didn't, all of it led to this moment. I hope you use this experience to become a better person. I hope you learn that family is not a resource to be exploited. I hope you understand that love cannot be bought, and neither can forgiveness. Your father would be ashamed of you. I am ashamed of you. Do not contest this will. I have documented everything. Every conversation, every text message, every attempt you made to manipulate me. If you try to challenge this, Richard has been instructed to release all of it publicly. Your sister knows everything. There is nothing you can say or do to change this. I loved you, Marcus, but I will not reward cruelty. Mom. The silence in the office was absolute. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall, the muffled sound of traffic outside. Marcus read the letter twice, his face cycling through emotions. Shock, anger, disbelief, rage. Then he looked at me. You knew. It wasn't a question. Yes, I said calmly. You knew she was changing the will, and you didn't tell me. You let me think. You let me believe. He couldn't finish the sentence. I let you believe what Mom wanted you to believe, I said. She wanted you to experience exactly what you tried to do to me. She wanted you to think you were getting half of everything, right up until the moment you realized you were getting nothing. Marcus stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. This is bullshit. She was sick. She wasn't thinking clearly. I'll contest it. Richard's voice was sharp. Mr. Morrison, I would strongly advise against that. As your mother stated in her letter, we have extensive documentation of your attempts to manipulate her into signing over property. We have the reverse mortgage documents with your name on them, text messages, emails, all of it dated and verified. If you contest this will, all of that becomes part of the public record. I don't care, Marcus snarled. She was my mother too. I have a right to. You have a right to nothing, I interrupted, and my voice was cold. You tried to steal from her. You tried to trick her. And even after she caught you, you kept pushing. Do you know what she told me, Marcus? She said that finding out about your scheme hurt her more than the cancer diagnosis. His face was purple now. She always loved you more. From the time we were kids, you were the perfect one. I could never. Don't you dare. I stood up now too. Don't you dare make this about childhood dynamics or favoritism. You're 35 years old. You're not a victim. You made choices. You chose to see Mom as a source of money. You chose to try to manipulate her. You chose to barely visit, to only call when you needed something. Those were your choices. I visited. I called. 3 times a year, Marcus. You visited 3 times a year. You know how many times I visited? Twice a month for 12 years. You know who was there when she died? Me. You were in Seattle at a client meeting. You couldn't even be bothered to be there at the end. He grabbed the letter from the table. I'm taking this to another lawyer. This isn't over. It is over, Richard said firmly. Mr. Morrison, I've been practicing estate law for 40 years. This will is airtight. Your mother was evaluated by 2 separate doctors in April to verify her mental competency specifically because she anticipated you might contest. She passed every evaluation. She was not under duress. She was not confused. She knew exactly what she was doing and why. Marcus looked between Richard and me, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before, the realization that he'd lost and there was nothing he could do about it. "Fuck both of you," he spat, and stormed out of the office. The door slammed, so hard that a picture on Richard's wall rattled. Richard and I sat in silence for a moment. Then he said, quietly, "Your mother was one of the strongest people I've ever known. She knew exactly what she was doing." "She did," I agreed. "He'll try to contest," Richard warned. "He's angry enough to try, even though he'll lose." "Let him," I said. "Let him waste his money on lawyers. Let everyone see what he tried to do. Mom was right. He needs to understand what his choices cost him." Marcus tried. Of course he tried. 3 days after the will reading, I got a certified letter from a law firm in Seattle. Marcus was contesting the will on the grounds of undue influence and diminished capacity. The letter claimed that I had manipulated our mother while she was sick and poisoned her against Marcus. Richard had anticipated this. We filed a response within a week, and attached to it were 37 pages of documentation. The reverse mortgage papers with Marcus's name on them. Text messages spanning 3 years showing his repeated requests for money and his angry responses when Mom asked for repayment of the $35,000 loan. Emails where he'd pitched investment opportunities that were thinly veiled requests for cash. Screenshots of his spotty visitation record from Mom's calendar. Medical evaluations from 2 separate doctors confirming Mom's mental competency in April. But the most damaging piece was something I hadn't known about until Richard showed it to me. Mom had kept a journal in the last months of her life. In it, she documented every interaction with Marcus, including phone calls where he'd asked about her estate planning and whether she'd thought about making things easier for her children by liquidating assets. In one entry from May, she'd written, "Marcus called today. He didn't ask how I was feeling. He didn't ask about my treatment. He still thinks I'm getting treatment. He asked if I'd thought about setting up a trust. He said he'd been reading about estate planning and thought it would simplify things. I know what he's really asking. He wants to make sure he gets his money. He doesn't care that I'm dying. He cares that he might not get his inheritance fast enough." Richard had the journal notarized and sealed. If Marcus's contest went to court, it would be entered as evidence. It never made it to court. Marcus's lawyer took one look at our response and the documentation and advised him to drop it. Contesting would cost him at least $50,000 in legal fees, and he would lose. Worse, if it went to trial, everything would become public record. Every text message, every manipulative email, every attempted scheme would be available for anyone to find with a simple internet search. Marcus dropped the contest on September 28th. The estate was settled, and everything transferred to my name. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. The thing about small acts of cruelty is that they rarely exist in isolation. When you pull at one thread, you often find a whole tapestry of ugliness underneath. I found the first thread by accident. In October, while going through Mom's papers in her house, I found a box in the back of her closet labeled Marcus Important. Inside were bank statements, canceled checks, and a ledger in Mom's handwriting. She'd kept meticulous records. The $35,000 from 3 years ago wasn't the first loan. It was one of many. 2012, $5,000 for Marcus's business venture. A food truck that never materialized, 2014. $12,000 for his first divorce, 2016. $8,000 for a car down payment. He totaled the car 6 months later, 2018. $15,000 for a real estate investment course, 2019. $7,000 to help with rent when he was between jobs, 2020. $10,000 for his second wedding, 2022. $35,000 for his second divorce. All in all, Mom had loaned Marcus $92,000 over 12 years. Not a single dollar had been repaid. Mom had never mentioned any of this to me. Not once. I sat on her bedroom floor and cried, surrounded by evidence of how much my brother had taken from our mother, and I made a decision. If Marcus wanted to go to war over this, I'd give him a war. I started making calls. First, I called Marcus's most recent ex-wife, Jennifer. We'd never been close, but I'd always liked her. She answered on the third ring. Rachel? I'm so sorry about your mother. I wanted to come to the funeral, but I didn't think it would be appropriate, given everything with Marcus. Actually, that's why I'm calling. I found some things in Mom's papers, and I have some questions. Do you mind if I ask you about the $35,000 Marcus borrowed from Mom for your divorce? There was a long pause. What, $35,000? My stomach dropped. Marcus told Mom he needed $35,000 to pay for your divorce settlement. She loaned him the money in 2022. Rachel, our divorce settlement was $12,000 total, and it was paid in installments from Marcus's paycheck. He didn't need to borrow anything. Are you sure? I'm positive. I have all the paperwork. What did he do with the money? I didn't know, but I was going to find out. Over the next 2 weeks, I tracked down 3 more of Marcus's ex-girlfriends and his first ex-wife, Shannon. I called his former roommate from his mid-20s. I even called the manager at the car dealership where he worked. A pattern emerged, and it was ugly. The $8,000 for a car down payment? Marcus had bought the car with a loan and spent Mom's money at a casino. Shannon, his first wife, confirmed this. She'd left him partly because of his gambling problem. The $15,000 for the real estate investment course? There was no course. Marcus had told Mom he was investing in his future, but Jennifer said he'd spent most of it on a trip to Vegas with his friends and the rest on a motorcycle he crashed 3 months later. The $7,000 for rent? He'd been evicted anyway and had couch surfed for 6 months before finding a new apartment. Every loan, every sob story, every promise to repay, all of it was built on lies. And Mom had known, at least toward the end. That's why she kept such detailed records. But there was something else I discovered, and this one made me physically ill. In Mom's email, I found a message from April 18th, the day she called me to come to Sacramento. It was from Marcus, sent at 2 a.m. He must have been drunk, because the grammar was sloppy and the tone was vicious. The email read, Mom, I know you're awake. You always were an insomniac. I've been thinking about our conversation, and I'm just going to say it. You're being selfish. You're sitting on over $500,000 in equity, and you won't help your own son. Do you know what it's like to watch Rachel succeed while I struggle? Do you know what it's like to be the failure child? You gave her everything. You paid for her college. You helped with her wedding. You babysit her kids. What have you ever given me except criticism? I'm asking for one thing. One loan against your house that you're just going to leave to both of us anyway. Why does it matter if I get my share now or later? You're old. You're alone. What do you need $600,000 for? I'm your son. Start acting like you care. Mom had replied the next morning with a single line. I will always love you, Marcus, but I will not enable you anymore. We need to talk. That email had been sent 14 hours before Mom called me to come to Sacramento. 14 hours before she sat me down and told me about the cancer and the new will. Marcus's cruelty, his entitlement, his complete lack of regard for Mom's well-being. All of it was right there in black and white. I forwarded the email to Richard. Make sure this is part of the permanent file, I told him. If Marcus ever tries anything again, I want this ready. Rachel, Richard said carefully, your brother sounds like he's in trouble. Gambling, drinking, manipulating family, these are signs of serious problems. Have you considered reaching out? Offering help? No, I said flatly. He had chances. Mom gave him chance after chance, loan after loan, forgiveness after forgiveness. She died thinking her son only saw her as a bank account. That's on him. But Richard's words stayed with me. Was I being cruel? Was I turning into something ugly in my quest for justice? I talked to Tom about it that night. We were in bed, and I'd been staring at the ceiling for an hour. Do you think I'm being vindictive? I asked. Tom was quiet for a moment. I think you're being protective of your mother's memory. There's a difference. Is there? I'm digging through Marcus's past, collecting evidence of his failures. That feels vindictive. You're collecting evidence of his lies and manipulation, Tom corrected. Rachel, your mom gave him $92,000 over 12 years. She never told you about any of it because she was embarrassed, or protective, or hopeful he'd change. And he never did. He just kept taking. He's still my brother. He's a person who tried to steal your mother's house. He's a person who harassed a dying woman for money. At some point, being related doesn't excuse behavior. It just makes it worse. I rolled over to face him. What would you do? Honestly, exactly what you're doing. Your mom set this in motion because she wanted Marcus to understand consequences. She wanted him to know that actions have repercussions. If you back down now, you're undoing everything she tried to teach him. He was right. I knew he was right. But part of me still felt guilty, like I was kicking someone while they were down. That guilt disappeared on November 3rd. I got a call from my boss, Patricia, asking me to come into her office. Her tone was odd, careful, like she was trying not to upset me. When I walked in, she had a concerned expression on her face. Rachel, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. Are you having financial troubles? I blinked. What? No. Why would you think that? I received a call this morning from someone claiming to be your brother. He said he was worried about you, that you've been acting erratically since your mother's death, and that you've been borrowing money from family members and not paying it back. He said he was concerned that your financial stress might be affecting your work performance. My blood ran cold. Patricia, I haven't borrowed money from anyone. My mother left me her estate, which is being managed properly through her attorney. My brother is angry about the terms of the will. Patricia nodded slowly. That's what I suspected. But Rachel, he also said something else. He said he was considering filing a complaint with HR about your mental state and whether you should be handling sensitive projects during this difficult time. I stood there, speechless. Marcus was trying to sabotage my job. I'm telling you this because I want you to be prepared, Patricia continued. I know you and I know your work. But I also have to take any complaint seriously, especially one that concerns an employee's well-being. Has your brother contacted anyone else at the company? I don't know. I managed. Patricia, I need you to know, my brother is not acting out of concern. He's angry that our mother didn't leave him anything in her will. He's trying to hurt me. I believe you, she said, but I need you to document everything. If he contacts anyone here again, I need to know immediately. And Rachel? You might want to consider a restraining order. I left her office shaking. A restraining order? Against my own brother? But it got worse. That afternoon, I got a call from Sophie's school. My 10-year-old daughter's teacher wanted to talk to me about a concerning situation. When I arrived, the teacher, Mrs. Patterson, looked uncomfortable. Mrs. Morrison, I'm not sure how to say this, but a man called the school this morning claiming to be Sophie's uncle. He said he was worried about Sophie's home environment, that there had been a death in the family, and you were struggling to cope. He asked about Sophie's behavior in class, and whether we'd noticed any signs of neglect. I felt like I'd been punched. He called my daughter's school. I want to be clear, we didn't give him any information about Sophie. The moment he started asking questions about your parenting, I ended the call and flagged it with the principal. But I wanted you to know. I also need to ask, is there any custody issue we should be aware of? Any reason why Sophie's uncle would be calling with these concerns? There's no custody issue, I said, working to keep my voice steady. My brother and I are having a dispute over our mother's estate. He's trying to harass me. I'll be contacting my attorney about this. Mrs. Patterson's expression softened. I'm so sorry you're dealing with this. For what it's worth, Sophie is doing wonderfully. She's a happy, well-adjusted child with no signs of distress or neglect. We're not concerned about her well-being at all. When I got home, I called Richard immediately. I was done playing defense. He called my job. He called my daughter's school. He's trying to paint me as mentally unstable and unfit as a parent. Can we do something about this? Richard's voice was grim. Yes, we can pursue harassment charges and file for a restraining order. But Rachel, I need you to document everything. Every call, every contact, every incident. Dates, times, what was said. Can you do that? Yes. Good. I'm also going to send Marcus a cease and desist letter. If he contacts you, your family, your employer, or anyone else in your life again, we'll move forward with legal action. The cease and desist letter was sent on November 5th. Marcus signed for it on November 6th. I thought that would stop him. I really did. On November 9th, I found out he'd posted on Facebook. Marcus's Facebook post was long, rambling, and vicious. It was also public, visible to all 847 of his friends, including many people we both knew, cousins, family friends, people from our hometown. The post read, "I need to share something that's been weighing on my heart. As most of you know, my mother passed away in August. What you might not know is what happened after. My sister Rachel has always been my mother's favorite. I accepted that years ago, but I never imagined that she would manipulate our dying mother into cutting me out of her will entirely. I'm not just talking about getting less, I'm talking about getting nothing. For the last year, while Mom was sick, Rachel isolated her from me. She convinced Mom that I was after her money, that I didn't care about her, that I was a bad son. She made Mom change her will to leave everything to herself. When I tried to visit, Rachel would make excuses. When I called, she'd tell Mom I was too busy to care. Now she has everything. The house, the money, all of it. And when I tried to contest this obvious manipulation, she threatened me with lawyers. She's even been calling my employers and trying to destroy my career. I loved my mother. I was a good son. I didn't deserve this. But apparently, greed runs deep in some families. I'm sharing this because I need people to know the truth about what happened. Rachel Morrison isn't the perfect daughter everyone thinks she is. She's manipulative, greedy, and cruel. And she used our mother's illness to steal my inheritance. If you're reading this, Rachel, I hope you can sleep at night knowing what you did. Within an hour, the post had 43 likes and 27 comments. Most were sympathetic to Marcus. That's terrible. Family can be so cruel. You deserve better. But then the tide started to turn. Our cousin Jennifer, Dad's niece, commented, "Marcus, this is completely one-sided. I visited Aunt Linda multiple times in her last months, and Rachel was there every time. Where were you? And why are you airing family business on Facebook?" My old friend from college, Sarah, who'd known both of us, wrote, "I'm sorry, but I was at Linda's funeral. Rachel gave a beautiful eulogy about her mother. You talked about yourself for 5 minutes. This doesn't add up." Then one of Mom's former teaching colleagues, Carol, commented with something that changed everything. "Marcus, I loved your mother dearly, and I'm sorry for your loss. But I was with Linda in June, and she told me exactly why she changed her will. It had nothing to do with Rachel manipulating her. It had to do with some papers you tried to get her to sign. She was heartbroken about it." I watched the comments section explode. People started asking questions. Marcus's ex-wife Jennifer even commented, "Marcus, you told me Linda gave you money for our divorce." She did give you money, $35,000. Our divorce cost $12,000. Where did the rest go? Marcus was deleting comments as fast as they appeared, but people were screenshotting them. The whole post was spiraling out of his control. Then Tom did something I didn't expect. He created his own post, and he tagged Marcus in it. I normally don't comment on family matters publicly, but since Marcus Morrison has chosen to air the situation on social media, I feel the need to set the record straight. I'm Rachel's husband. I was there through all of this. Here are the facts. 1. Rachel visited her mother twice a month for 12 years. Marcus visited 3 times a year at most. 2. Rachel took family leave from her job to care for Linda in her final months. She was there when Linda died. Marcus was in Seattle. 3. Linda changed her will in April, 4 months before she died, because of Marcus's own actions. This is documented by her attorney, medical professionals, and Linda's own writings. 4. Marcus did not contest the will because his attorney told him he would lose, and all of his attempts to manipulate Linda would become public record. 5. After dropping the legal contest, Marcus called Rachel's employer and Rachel's daughter's school, making false claims about Rachel's mental health and parenting. We have documentation of all of this. 6. Marcus is now committing defamation by making false claims on social media. Marcus, you lost your inheritance because of your own actions. Stop blaming your sister for consequences you earned. And stop harassing our family. If you continue with this behavior, we will pursue legal action for harassment and defamation. This is your final warning. Tom's post was shared 63 times in the first hour. Friends, family, coworkers, people started commenting with their own experiences with Marcus. A pattern emerged that even I hadn't fully understood. An old girlfriend from 2010 commented, Marcus borrowed $2,000 from me and never paid it back. A former roommate, Marcus moved out in the middle of the night, owing me 3 months of rent. Another ex, Marcus told me his mom was sick and needed money for treatment. I gave him $500. Turns out she wasn't sick at the time, and he spent it at a casino. My brother's entire adult life of manipulation, lies, and using people was being exposed in real time on social media. And I didn't have to do anything. The truth was telling itself. Marcus deleted his original post within 3 hours, but it was too late. Screenshots were everywhere. Our cousins had seen it. Mom's friends had seen it. Even Marcus's current boss had apparently seen it, because 2 days later, Marcus posted that he was looking for new opportunities and dealing with family issues. He'd gotten himself fired. Richard called me that evening. I saw the Facebook situation. I have to say, I'm not sure whether to be appalled at the public nature of it or impressed at how thoroughly Marcus destroyed his own credibility. I didn't want it to go this way, I said honestly. I just wanted him to leave us alone. I know. But Rachel, this actually helps us. If Marcus ever tries to legally challenge anything again, we now have public evidence of him making false, defamatory statements. We also have multiple people on record discussing his pattern of borrowing money and not repaying it. His credibility is gone. He lost his job, Richard. I feel like this has gone too far. He lost his job because he publicly defamed you and aired confidential family matters involving his employer in the comment section. That's on him, not you. You've been defending yourself and your mother's wishes. That's all. I didn't hear from Marcus for 3 weeks after the Facebook disaster. I actually started to relax, thinking maybe he'd finally given up. Then, on December 1st, he showed up at my house. It was a Saturday afternoon. Tom had taken the kids to Sophie's piano recital. I'd stayed home because I had a migraine. I was lying on the couch when the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and froze. Marcus was standing on my porch. He looked terrible, unshaven, rumpled clothes, dark circles under his eyes. For a moment, I felt a flash of the old sympathy, the old instinct to help my little brother. Then I remember the call to Sophie's school, and the feeling disappeared. I didn't open the door. What do you want, Marcus? I need to talk to you. Please, Rachel. Just 5 minutes. You can talk to me through the door, or you can leave. Those are your options. There was a long pause. When he spoke again, his voice was broken. I lost my job. I lost my apartment. I'm living in my car, Rachel. I have nothing. That's not my problem. Please. I'm not asking for money from the estate. I'm just asking for a loan. $5,000. Just enough to get back on my feet. I'll pay you back. I swear. I almost laughed. After everything, the manipulation, the lies, the harassment, the Facebook post, he was still asking for money. No. Rachel, I'm your brother. I know I messed up. I know I said things I shouldn't have. But I'm desperate. Please. I need help. You need help that I can't give you, I said. You need to figure out your life without using other people's money to do it. Mom gave you chance after chance. She loaned you $92,000 over 12 years. She forgave you over and over. And you repaid her by trying to steal her house and harassing her when she said no. That was a misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a scheme. You tried to trick her into signing papers that would have left me with nothing. When she caught you, you got angry at her. You sent her vicious emails. You made her final months harder than they needed to be. I was desperate. You were selfish. My voice rose despite myself. You've been selfish your entire adult life, Marcus. Everything is always about what you need, what you deserve, what someone else should give you. You've never taken responsibility for anything. That's not fair. You've always had everything easy. Mom loved you more. She helped you more. She paid for my college because I got scholarships that covered most of it, and I worked 3 jobs to cover the rest. She helped with my wedding because Tom and I saved for 3 years, and she contributed $3,000. She babysits my kids because I asked her to be involved in their lives, and I bring them to visit her, not the other way around. Nothing in my life has been handed to me, Marcus. I worked for all of it. You got the house. I got the house because I was there. Because I called and visited and cared about Mom as a person, not as a source of money. You want to know what the difference between us is, Marcus? When Mom got sick, my first thought was, how can I help her? Your first thought was, how does this affect my inheritance? That's why you have nothing. Silence from the other side of the door. I'm sorry, he said finally, and for the first time, he actually sounded sincere. I'm sorry for everything. I'm sorry for what I tried to do with the house. I'm sorry for the Facebook post. I'm sorry for calling your work and Sophie's school. I was angry and scared and I lashed out. But Rachel, I have nothing. I'm living in my car. I can't get a job because potential employers Google me and find all the shit from the Facebook disaster. I can't rent an apartment because I have an eviction on my record. I need help. Then get help from someone else. Call a friend. Call Jennifer or Shannon. Call one of your exes. Oh wait, you burned those bridges too, didn't you? Please. He was crying now. I could hear it in his voice. You're my sister. Your family. Doesn't that mean anything? It did mean something, I said quietly. It meant something to Mom when you tried to steal from her. It meant something to me when you called my daughter's school. It means something now, which is why I'm talking to you at all instead of calling the cops. But Marcus, I can't save you. Even if I wanted to, I can't. Because every time someone saves you, you learn that you can keep behaving this way and someone will catch you. It has to stop. So you're just going to leave me with nothing? While you live in your nice house with your perfect family, I'm supposed to be homeless. And there it was. The bitterness, the resentment, the refusal to take responsibility. Even now, even after everything, it was still my fault in his mind. I'm not leaving you with nothing. You left yourself with nothing. Every choice you made led you here. And until you accept that, until you stop blaming everyone else for your problems, nothing is going to change. Fuck you, Rachel, he said, and I heard his footsteps retreating from the porch. I watched through the window as he got into a beat-up Honda Civic that I didn't recognize, probably borrowed or bought cheap after he lost whatever car he'd had before. He sat in the driver's seat for a long moment, his head in his hands. Part of me wanted to open the door, to hand him money, to fix it like I'd fixed so many things for him when we were kids. But I thought about Mom's letter, about her final wish that Marcus understand consequences, and I stayed inside. He drove away, and I stood at the window crying. Not for the brother I'd just turned away, but for the brother I'd once believed in who maybe had never really existed at all. The holidays that year were strange. It was our first Christmas without Mom, and the absence of Marcus made it feel even more hollow. My kids asked about their uncle, and I struggled with what to tell them. Uncle Marcus and I are having some grown-up problems right now, I finally said. Sometimes families disagree about important things. Is he sad that Grandma died? Sophie asked, perceptive as always. I think he is, honey. I think he's sad about a lot of things. In January, I started the process of selling Mom's house. I'd kept it through the holidays, unable to face clearing it out, but it was time. Every weekend, Tom and I would drive to Sacramento and sort through boxes, deciding what to keep, what to donate, what to throw away. It was in Mom's attic, in late January, that I found the box labeled "For Rachel" after. Inside was a letter and a small jewelry box. The letter was dated April 22nd, the day after Mom changed her will. My dearest Rachel, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you've likely had to deal with your brother's anger. I'm sorry for putting you in this position, but I need you to understand why I did it. When your father died, I made a promise to him that I would take care of both of you equally. For years, I thought that meant giving Mark a second chances, helping him financially, being patient with his struggles. I thought tough love was giving up on him, and I couldn't do that. But discovering what he tried to do with the house made me realize I'd been wrong. I wasn't helping Marcus by enabling him. I was teaching him that he didn't have to be responsible, that someone would always save him, that he could manipulate and scheme, and there would be no consequences. I failed your brother, Rachel. Not by cutting him out of the will, but by not doing it sooner. By not forcing him to face the results of his choices years ago. By giving him $92,000 over 12 years, and never once requiring repayment or accountability. I'm giving you everything not because I love you more, but because you've built a life that honors what your father and I tried to teach you both. Responsibility, hard work, integrity, treating others with respect. You deserve to be rewarded for that. Marcus needs to learn those lessons, and he never will if people keep cushioning his falls. I know he'll be angry. I know he might try to hurt you, and I'm sorry for that. But I also know you're strong enough to handle it. You're strong enough to stand firm, even when it hurts. Even when he's your brother, and you want to save him. You cannot save someone who refuses to save themselves. In the jewelry box, you'll find my mother's ring, your grandmother's ring. She gave it to me when I married your father, and told me to give it to the child who most honored the family's values. I want you to have it. Wear it and remember that you are loved, you are valued, and you have lived your life in a way that makes me immensely proud. Whatever has happened with Marcus by the time you read this, know that it was not your fault. You are not responsible for his choices. You are only responsible for your own, and yours have been good and true. Live well, my darling girl. Raise your children to be as strong and kind as you are. Keep my garden alive if you can. And remember that I loved you beyond measure. Your father and I will be watching over you always. All my love, Mom. I sat in the dusty attic and sobbed, clutching the letter and the small velvet box. Tom found me there 20 minutes later and just held me while I cried. The ring was beautiful, a simple gold band with 3 small diamonds. I'd seen it in pictures of my grandmother, but never knew what had happened to it. I slipped it onto my right hand, and it fit perfectly. People ask me sometimes if I have regrets. If I wish I'd handled things differently with Marcus. If I think Mom was too harsh. The truth is complicated. I regret that my brother became the kind of person who would try to steal from his mother. I regret that our relationship is broken beyond repair. I regret that my children won't have a relationship with their uncle. But I don't regret standing firm. I don't regret honoring Mom's wishes. I don't regret refusing to enable Marcus one more time. I've learned that love and boundaries aren't opposites, they're partners. You can love someone and still refuse to be manipulated by them. You can hope someone changes and still protect yourself from their destructive behavior. You can be family and still say no. I've learned that enablement masquerading as kindness is a form of cruelty. Every time Mom gave Marcus money without requiring accountability, she taught him that responsibility was optional. Every time she accepted his excuses, she reinforced his belief that he didn't need to change. She realized this at the end, and she tried to correct it, but it was almost too late. I've learned that consequences are teachers. Marcus lost his inheritance, not because Mom didn't love him, but because she finally loved him enough to let him face the results of his choices. Whether he'll learn from it remains to be seen. But at least the lesson is there, waiting for him when he's ready. Most importantly, I've learned that you can't save someone who won't save themselves. I spent years making excuses for Marcus, defending him, believing his potential. But potential means nothing without effort. Character means nothing without integrity. And family means nothing if it's only a shield to hide behind while treating people badly. Mom's final gift to me wasn't the money or the house. It was permission to stop carrying the weight of Marcus's failures. It was freedom from the obligation to fix him. It was the understanding that his choices were his own, and his consequences were his to bear. I wear my grandmother's ring every day, and when I look at it, I think about the women who came before me, strong women who raised their children with love and boundaries, who valued integrity over comfort, who understood that the hardest expression of love is sometimes letting someone fall. I think about my daughter Sophie, who's watching how I handle this situation, learning what it means to be strong and kind simultaneously, to be forgiving without being a doormat. I'm modeling for her what Mom modeled for me, that you can grieve a relationship while still protecting yourself, that you can wish someone well while refusing to be their safety net. And I think about Marcus, out there somewhere, maybe finally learning the lessons Mom tried to teach him. Or maybe not. Either way, it's not my responsibility anymore. Last I heard, Marcus is still in Tacoma, still working at the dealership, still struggling. He's been posting on Facebook about new beginnings and second chances, which I hope is genuine and not another scheme. Me? I'm doing better than I ever have. My career is advancing. My family is thriving. I have financial security that my parents would be proud of, and I'm using it to build a legacy for my children. Mom's garden is in full bloom this summer. Roses, tomatoes, zucchini, herbs. I sit on the same bench where Mom told me about the cancer and the will, and I talk to her. I tell her about the kids, about work, about life. I thank her for her final gift to me, which wasn't just the inheritance, but the permission to live my life free from the obligation to fix my brother. Sometimes I wonder if Marcus sits somewhere and thinks about what he lost. Not just the money, but the relationship, the trust, the place in our family. I wonder if he understands yet that the real inheritance wasn't the $687,000 he thought he'd get. It was the values Mom and Dad tried to instill in us: responsibility, integrity, respect, love that doesn't require manipulation to earn. I got that inheritance. I'm living it every day. Marcus could have had it too. But he made different choices, and those choices have consequences. That's the lesson Mom wanted him to learn. And whether he ever does or not, I'm at peace knowing I honored her wishes, protected my family, and stood firm in my values even when it was hard. Even when it was my brother standing on the other side of the door, asking for one more chance. Even when every instinct said to open that door and help. Because love isn't always about saying yes. Sometimes it's about saying no and meaning it, and living with the consequences of that no, knowing it was right, even when it hurt. That's my story. That's how my brother's smirk disappeared, how Mom's final plan unfolded, and how I learned that sometimes the greatest act of love is letting someone face the truth of who they've become. I hope Marcus finds his way. I hope he learns and grows and becomes someone our parents would be proud of. But whether he does or not, I'm going to be okay. More than okay. I'm going to thrive. And that, I think, is exactly what Mom wanted.